For those of you who are just joining us, we will get started in about 3 or 4 minutes. I'm just letting folks in. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Happy March.
Happy March. I hope all are well. Yes, it has been a year in this crazy way of working. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We still have people joining in. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We'll get started in just a minute. I hope everybody is doing okay today. We still have people joining, so we'll get started in just a minute. Good morning, everybody. People are still joining, so I'm going to hold for just a minute or two. Good morning, everyone. We still have folks joining, so I'm holding for just a minute. It's good to see everybody, even if it's just Hollywood Square style. I guess I'm dating myself with that reference.
Is that legal in North Carolina to date yourself?
I've been doing it for years. It's called being single.
I'm just glad it wasn't the Brady Bunch reference. I'm getting tired of that one.
Hollywood Squares was so much more fun.
Especially when Paul Lynde was on it.
That's the name I was trying to remember. Paul Lynde.
Paul Lynde.
He was a scream. Good morning, everybody. I know we're about 1 minute over, but I still have people actively trying to get in, so we're holding for just a minute. It's good to see all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Sorry, I'm on a few minutes late here, I fear. Did you start already? I'm sorry.
I was just saying we're holding for about another minute because we still have people actively logging on, but we should get going here in just a minute or two. We're at about 69 folks now, so I think we can probably, well, one more, we're at 70. I think we can probably go ahead and get started now. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all, even if you're just a postage stamp on my screen. we've been in this situation for a year now. So I hope you're all holding up well. I hope everybody is taking care of themselves and each other, which I know you are. So anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. Obviously, there's new information about the vaccine. I'm sure everybody wants to hear about that. We have information about the budget and so much more. We have an action-packed agenda today. So without further ado, I am going to just welcome members of the press. I do believe we have folks from WRAL here today. Welcome. I think we have folks from the Well. So lots to talk about and a lot of people here joining us this morning. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our Chancellor and our Provost in the roundtable session. This is an unscripted sort of ask me anything type of situation. So if you would like to get us started, Chancellor Guskiewicz, it would be great.
Great. Well, thanks, Shana. It's good to see everyone. This is a nice 2 or 3 Zoom screens here as I'm scrolling across, and it's great to be back with you this morning. And there's a lot going on right now, but I just want to take a moment to reflect a little bit. As you just indicated, Shana, it has now been just about a year. I mean, it was March the 11th that I gathered a team of leaders here in the South Building to talk about how we move forward as we saw this pandemic here arriving to North Carolina on our campus. And so it has been just about 1 year, and it has certainly been one of the most challenging years in our history. From the 2-week transition that we made at that point from about March 11th to about March 23rd, 24th to remote learning and working to now. I've just been amazed by the resilience of our campus community. And so I just want to say thank you to each one of you, to all of our employees that are listening and watching today. I've said many times that our staff really are the reason that we've made it through this year. You've enabled us to stay true to our mission. I've said that we've never closed this university down, and I know that it hasn't been easy, and I just want you to know how grateful our leadership team is. We did start in-person classes February the 8th, and I've had the opportunity to talk with many people since that point. It seems like it's going well. It's been great to get people out from behind that Zoom screen. And I do remain optimistic that we're going to continue to maintain a safe campus environment for all of our campus community. And, you did receive the email yesterday regarding the vaccine. And I know Kathy Brennan is here to give you some additional details, but I do want to reemphasize what I said yesterday in the campus message. I just want to urge, each of you to try to get that vaccine as soon as it's available to you. And each of you are automatically entered into the system, and in-person employees can start receiving that vaccine as early as today. We are sending an email tomorrow about planning for the fall semester, and consulting with our public health experts and all of our planning that we've done to this point. I remain hopeful, very hopeful, for a normal fall semester similar to the fall of 2019 and 2018. And we do anticipate in-person classroom teaching with safety measures still in place, but taking major steps toward typical campus operations, even beyond just the classroom environment. Provost Blouin's here and is going to share a little bit more about details of the work that he and the roadmap implementation team have been working on. And, it's also exciting with the governor's, the executive order from last week to allow to have students and fans in our stadiums. And this goes beyond just basketball games at the Smith Center, but it allows for, to open up our lacrosse stadium and baseball stadium and other events on campus. And so I hope you'll try to take advantage of that. And I know that they have set up for a safe environment there. And we're looking forward to seeing people back in the Smith Center again for the Carolina Duke game this Saturday. We are going to allow about 2,500 seniors here in Carolina into that game. And I know the athletics departments work really hard to try to allow for that to happen in a safe environment. The town sent important safety guidelines for the game for this weekend, and we're working closely with them to ensure that our community members, our students, those who aren't students but live in the town, know what those expectations are. I know that Nate Knuffman's with us today, and he's going to share an update with you regarding the budget. I'm very pleased with the progress we're making there, and we're making difficult decisions, but I can't thank, I know many of you here that are part of the employee forum and who may be watching have taken part in those conversations and discussions with leadership within the schools and units, and but we're going to get to the right place and have a balanced budget by June of 2022 because of everybody's efforts here. Some good news, enrollment has remained steady. We just got some updates yesterday from our enrollment office, and we are, in terms of total credit hours, we're right about where we were last year, and total head count as well. So we've seen very few students take gap years or gap semesters. I think I mentioned to you the last time that the admissions were looking really good. We had a record number of 54,000 applications this year, and that's up about 20% from last year. And the yield, meaning those who have accepted our offer, is about 15% so far, and that's typically what we see by about March 1st, and we'll see that ramping up by April 1st, and then up to May 1st, which is the final date. We anticipate to see an incredible new class coming in this fall. Research funding has also stayed consistent. Terry Magnuson's reported on that we're likely to match what we brought in last year, upwards of $1.2 billion and potentially even more. So again, that speaks to all the hard work and efforts of so many of our staff working alongside our researchers and faculty to keep us as a leading global public research university. Later this week, we'll also update the community on our plans for commencement. We are looking to hold an in-person series of in-person ceremonies in Keenan Stadium following the state guidelines around this, and we're very excited about the speakers. We've identified 2 incredible speakers, and look forward to sharing that news with you later this week to the whole campus community. Finally, before I pass it off to Provost Blouin, I just want to highlight our announcement last week about the start of a new anti-bias and diversity training initiative, fulfilling a promise that we made to our campus community about a year ago. And I hope you've received that, and we'll be preparing to take that online course. We're getting some feedback on the second module around diversity, equity, and inclusion that'll likely come out early this summer. But, as I've said many times to this group, build our community together as our first initiative in our strategic plan is extremely important, and we continue working to ensure that all voices on our campus are heard and that everyone knows that they belong. And from our new DEI Council to the History, Race, and Way Forward Commission, I'm just really proud of all the work that we're doing. And I also want to just acknowledge and emphasize that Shana has shared with me some of the concerns that have come to her through STAC, through the Staff Advisory Committee and Employee Forum, that we need to be sure that that committee is comprised of not just upper level administrators on that DEI Council, that we want to be sure that we have staff from all levels that are sharing their thoughts and opinions about how we move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Blouin for an update, and be happy to take your questions then. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Shana. It's great to see everybody. I'll try to be brief. Let me start off with amplifying some of the positive news, that the Chancellor highlighted. One is access to the vaccine, and I think most of you are aware of President Biden's announcement yesterday. His confidence that enough doses of the vaccine will be available to the entire country by the end of May in order to provide enough vaccines so that every American can be vaccinated. As you may sense, the state is trying to ramp up its capacity to deliver these vaccines now. that the availability is much more available to the community. The recent addition of the J&J vaccine, I think, is a big part of that. The J&J vaccine will be available to our community, and I just wanted to share with you some of the things that we have learned, with regards to the J&J vaccine, because I know that many people are worried that maybe the J&J vaccine might not be as good as the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. We had a fairly lengthy conversation yesterday with our healthcare experts, and they just wanted to remind all of us that the J&J vaccine is a very solid vaccine, and unfortunately, the percent efficacy data is often being used as the final determinant of the value of one vaccine over another. The reality is that this vaccine has been thoroughly tested and has been tested in a different set of environments than the Pfizer and the Moderna. In fact, has been tested in a much more rigorous fashion. So if these vaccines were being tested head to head, they're confident that the vaccine would perform nearly as well or as well as the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. So I just wanted to encourage everyone, if you have a chance to get the J&J vaccine, not to be concerned about it as being an inferior vaccine. It also has the advantage of being a single dose vaccine, and also the advantage of not requiring deep refrigeration, which will be very important in some of our more rural counties, and also being able to get it distributed much more broadly across the state, utilizing pharmacies across our state landscape. So those are some really good things. We also have been planning on our reaction to the governor's recent executive order. The university will be making a statement about this sometime perhaps next week with regards to any changes that might take place. Probably the top issue that we're looking at is whether or not we might modify our gathering rule. Right now, we have a 10 indoor, 25 outdoor gathering restriction that is inconsistent now with the state's 25-50 and the county and the town's 25-50 adoption of the governor's recommendation. As of right now, we are still adhering to the 10-25 and reevaluating it over the next several days. So that's something that we'll be making further comments around later on. The committee is also actively involved in summer and fall planning. The summer is probably going to look a lot like last summer, whereas the fall, we are planning under the best case scenario of a return to what I guess we're calling near normal fall experience, which will bring the majority of our faculty and students back to campus and have face-to-face instruction as the primary mode of instruction. We will be reducing slightly the dorm occupancy from what we would consider as normal. Our normal occupancy is right around 8,500 students. We currently have about 3,200 students in this spring semester, and we'll probably move to about 7,000 students for the fall. Not quite what we would consider as normal, but a significant move from where we are currently. Of course, all of this is conditional based upon the rapid changes that might be taking place around us. But based upon all of the predictions, particularly with regards to vaccine availability and the presumption that the majority of our community will participate in a rigorous vaccination program, we believe that with mask wearing, with continuation of our aggressive testing program, and with a near 80% or greater participation with our vaccine program, we can have a near normal experience in the fall. A lot more to be worked out on the details of that, and we will be back to share with you progress that the campus is making with regards to the fall plan. And with that, Shana, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both very much. Are there any questions for either the Chancellor or the Provost?
do these conditions take into account the COVID variants that are arising?
Yes, I think we're all very aware of the variants. Unfortunately, in this country, we have not aggressively tested for variants in the same way that other countries have. I was informed that we're going to be ramping that up, at least within the state of North Carolina, to increase our vigilance on that. So I think that the variants could make a difference. Right now, the variants, at least in terms of our knowledge of them, have not expressed themselves to a significant degree within our state, but we are monitoring that carefully. If you look at the flattening of the curve, some have argued that perhaps that flattening of the case curve might be due to a more that the variant might be expressing itself more than it has in the past. We're just uncertain as to what variants how that might affect our plan, and so we're just monitoring it really carefully. The other thing that we would be worried about is if a new variant popped up that was that the vaccine did not protect us from. That obviously would require an additional adjustment. We also are aware that all of the major pharmaceutical companies that are making these vaccines are already, at least Pfizer and Moderna, are already in the process of manufacturing boosters for the variant. And so those boosters are likely to be effective or available in the fall as well. So we're monitoring all of that simultaneously, staying in touch very closely with our healthcare experts. We get a lot of advice from our infectious disease and public health experts, and many of them are very much on the front line, literally doing the research that will help inform us around these decisions.
Great. Thank you. I see Keith has his hand up.
If I could just add one thing to that, Shane, I just want to say that we're very fortunate that with the Carolina Together testing program and the fact that we are conducting our own analysis of the samples that come through our 3 testing sites here, that we have the ability to test for the variants. And Dr. Barza and his incredible team over there at the Genome Sciences Laboratory, we are working on trying to secure some funding to even do more extensive analysis to try to pick up any information we can intel on the variants. So that's the other good news.
Great. Thank you for that addition. Keith?
Yes. So since university employees are now being moved into phase 3, and it explicitly says, if you work in person, does the frequency in which you work on campus matter? Because some people come in once a week. Are they still eligible to be phase 3?
So I'm going to turn to Kathy Brennan on this because I think we've talked about this, and we want to try to, I just want to start off by saying that our goal is to try to get everyone vaccinated as soon as we can, so that they can that we can get back to a full sort of slate of employees working on our campus to carry out our mission. But Kathy, you can better answer that question, which is a good question, Keith.
Sure. So yeah, in terms of frontline essential workers, you self-identify as meeting that definition. And so you really each person needs to decide on their own whether or not they feel like they meet that definition. There's so many nuances in how people are working currently. Some people are back full-time. Some people are back 3 days a week. Some people are back one day a week. So really you need to make that decision on your own if you meet that definition and self-identify.
Kathy, could you clarify in the policy the word imminent, because that also is something that would affect the staff in terms of their imminent return. Could you maybe give a little bit of context on that and how they might interpret that word?
Sure. So, imminent really means it's about to happen, right? So again, if maybe you've been working remotely, but you're about to come back to work starting, next week or whatever that date is, you need to make that decision on, self-identifying as a frontline essential worker. I do want to say that there's a lot of people, it just opened up today. There's a lot of mandatory employees, including myself, who have been here every day since April working on campus. So you want to make sure that frontline workers, are able to get that vaccine. If you're not coming back to work until the fall, that's not really imminent. So again, you need to make a decision based on your own, specifics on how, if you're in person or if you're about to come back to person.
And I would only add to probably also have some conversations with your direct supervisor about what their expectations may be as we think about ramping up more of the on-campus operations as you determine, whether or not that expectation may be that you are back sooner than what maybe we had originally thought, given that the vaccine distribution is really, I think we're in a better place today than we thought we might be a month ago.
And Kathy, if you don't mind, Shane, I was just going to ask, because I think a lot of staff might be interested in this, and that is the process by which employees are being uploaded into the North Carolina system. There's a little bit of confusion around what that means and what the responsibility of the individual is with regards to that uploading. Could you clarify that for everybody?
Sure. So we bulk uploaded all university employees yesterday afternoon. So probably most of you received an email from the state. That email is just basically an introduction email. And if you would like to receive the vaccine, you would click on the link to register to receive the vaccine. If you do not want to receive the vaccine, then you do not have to do anything with that email. We also, the university has receives no data in regards to whether or not you decided to register and receive the vaccine. So basically each individual, if you receive the email, if you'd like to receive the vaccine, you can register with the state, and that's where you would flag whether or not you meet one of those eligibility criteria. So right now, healthcare workers over the age of 65 and older, and then starting today, the frontline essential workers. So you would specifically call out which one you are. And then if you're eligible, you can schedule with a provider for a vaccine. So that could be, your county health department, your local pharmacy, or the Friday Center located near campus. So again, it's totally up to the individual to follow through on the process.
I think Tracy has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you for this information. This is great. I do wonder if there will be some sort of a process or policy where to be able to come back to campus, you'll have to show your card of vaccination.
No, I at least as of right now, we are not in a position to mandate vaccines, and there are a couple of issues there. One is the FDA has not formally approved this as a finally approved vaccine, and so that's one issue. The other is whether or not we as a university would want to mandate it. We're going to be looking at what UNC Healthcare is going to do, also seek the advice of our healthcare experts, and have some conversations with campus leaders as to whether or not that would be something that we would ultimately do at this university. Would also be interested in seeing what the other universities within the university system are doing, and or whether or not the system office might have a position on that as well. So we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, and I'll just add that in addition to what Bob has just said, that on our call with all the chancellors last week in the system, the UNC system, it was made clear that it's highly unlikely that the CDC will mandate this as a as a required vaccination for employees, and so we would likely follow that guidance, and so it's likely not going to be a mandatory vaccine for employment or for students. So, got
it. There are a couple of questions in the chat, and And so let me start with what has been done in terms of the air handlers and filtration systems throughout the academic halls, residence halls, and research facilities throughout the last year in order to make them more resilient and effective in reducing the spread of the airborne particulates pathogens throughout these spaces?
Yeah, I can comment on that. And I would say that our university facilities people have really been working hard. There are two things that they have been focusing their attention on. One is airflow within all the buildings, and the second is filtration capacity. Their priority to date has been those buildings that are going to be occupied predominantly by faculty, staff, or students, during the spring semester. With the consideration of the fall, they also have on their list to now take on all the remaining buildings that they had not addressed as it relates to those two issues. When they find that an area is doesn't have quite the level of airflow that they would like, then they have been purchasing supplemental filtration systems and placing them within these facilities. So our facilities staff have been really hard at work on this issue throughout the last fall, spring. Is a lot of buildings. I never realized how many actual buildings that we have in this university, and a lot of old buildings, that do require attention. And so I just want to tip my hat to all of the folks from representing our facilities and the work that they have been doing to help keep the campus safe.
I just want to echo what Bob said. I mean, it is incredible. I mean, I've been on campus since throughout all this, and have had the opportunity to walk campus, walk to buildings, and see the efforts of so many of our employees that have been here, frontline essential workers, doing everything that Bob just described and more to keep our libraries safe and clean so students can be in them, and our dining halls and the student union. And there's been so much work that's led to this successful fall and spring semester. So I just want to be sure that how appreciative we are. And I know we have a lot still out there in front of us, but the air handlers has been a big concern. And so Bob, thanks for updating me.
Okay, thank you. I think the next question was answered about whether we were considering making vaccines a requirement. I think the answer
You're on mute, Shana.
Okay. I think what we heard was that vaccinations will not be made a requirement at this point because of the emergency use authorization. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Has the DHHS form been adjusted to put university employees into group 3? I tried to fill out the form online yesterday and answered truthfully. The form identified me as not included in group 3. The disconnect may have been K through 12 versus university employees.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
that, the date that all of group 3 launched was today. So the announcement was made yesterday at 2 p.m. So it could have just been the timing of when that person tried to fill out the form, but it should be updated now.
Great. Will UNC become a designated vaccine distribution site to make it easier access for employees?
I guess the question would be beyond what we're already doing at UNC, out at the Friday Center through UNC Health. Is that the question?
I'm not sure. I didn't.
Yeah. So Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but or Kathy, I believe that we've been approved for campus health at the appropriate time, perhaps when we move into group 4.
Yes.
For students, yes. And obviously the Friday Center. And I'll just say for anybody that's on this call who has participated or volunteered or helped to upfit the distribution center and Friday Center, we've just received so many compliments UNC Health has about the way that has run over the past several weeks. And so that seems to be working efficiently, and we're likely going to continue to have that as our primary site. But and with the exception of, I think, students, and that would likely happen in campus health. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yes. Yeah. So campus health is definitely looking at how to do mass vaccination of students. They mostly fall into group 5, which will be the last to be vaccinated, except for students that might have a medical chronic condition. So they're looking in how to stand something up kind of at the end of the eligibility criteria.
These things are changing rapidly. However, every day we're getting a different communication that, and obviously the direction is to push aggressively to vaccinate as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. The other major facility is the R&R lot, which has been also a very efficient, high volume vaccination site. And so the combination of the Friday Center and the R&R lot, I think, give our employees a lot of capacity to get their vaccination done.
And Kathy, just real quickly, I think with the news of last evening, was it not that there's the possibility that students living in residence halls, congregate living, may fall into group 4, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, so they've subdivided group 4 into 2 subgroups. So the first group is the higher risk people with medical conditions, and they would be open starting on March 24th. So that's sooner than we thought. That's only 3 weeks away. And then the second subgroup includes students that live in congregate settings, so dorms, fraternities, and sororities.
Yeah, and I think this is really exciting because I'll tell you, I was on a call, the Chancellor's call that I mentioned here earlier, just probably 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about it would be nice if we could get some students vaccinated before they left for the semester to go back to their communities, and that would be in mid-May. And here we are now talking about the possibility of some of them getting vaccinated as early as March 24th. So again, this is just really exciting news, and again, why I think we're so optimistic that we're going to maybe be able to even have a somewhat of a normal summer and certainly a fall semester.
I don't see any more questions, and we're a bit over, but just one last call. Does anyone have any questions for the roundtable portion before we move on? Okay, thank you so much. This was a great way to start this meeting with this fabulous news. So thank you for all for participating. Next, we're gonna have Nate Knuffman give us an update on the budget.
Thank you, Shana. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I have a great deal of respect for the incredible work and contributions of the staff at Carolina, and very much appreciate the opportunity to provide a budget update to you today. I've got a couple slides that I'd like to bring up really quickly. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So as you've undoubtedly heard discussed over the past several months, UNC-Chapel Hill currently faces 3 major financial challenges. First, we have a structural shortfall, which is really a mismatch of our recurring revenue and expenses, and that has evolved over several years, and it's estimated to total about $100 million in this current fiscal year. Secondly, COVID-19 has impacted numerous revenue streams. They're primarily located in our income producing units. The major areas impacted include housing, dining, parking, patient care, and athletics. And collectively, these revenue losses could be as much as $200 million this fiscal year. Then lastly, we have an estimated $850 million in deferred maintenance need. The state is facing a significant backlog statewide, and our funding needs greatly exceed the amount allocated to Carolina each year. These last 2 areas of financial challenge are not the focus of the update today, but please note they are being addressed. Since the onset of the pandemic, we've worked with the leadership of our income producing units to implement management plans on the operational and financial impacts from COVID-19. On deferred maintenance, we are working on a variety of options to provide a more reliable and dedicated source of funding to address this long-standing challenge. Today, the focus is primarily on our current efforts to address that first area discussed, the structural deficit. So here you can see a visual of the Carolina budget timeline and the evolution over the past 2+ years. It really shows the tremendous amount of budget work and change in a relatively short period of time. We didn't have an all funds budget working budget perspective on campus before 2019. In 2019, we implemented a common format that allowed us really to have a better financial understanding and visibility across the institution. It also provided a foundation just to be better prepared to make resource adjustments as COVID-19 has impacted the campus here in the spring of 2020. We instituted mitigation measures early during that time period, and that really helped us gain some additional time to assess and avoid some more draconian actions at other institutions. And then as we entered the fall, we really restarted our budget process again, which was paused. And I'll expand on this more in the next slide, but I think the process has really reflected our commitment to transparency and engagement. So from September through November time period, we met with over 30 campus units to discuss Carolina's budget situation and re-examine each unit's budget. The meetings really helped us refine our understanding of the challenge and really informed our approach to address the budget deficit. In December, we then met with all 30 units again to discuss a range of personnel and operating reductions for both this current fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. The options considered ranged from 0 to 2.5% reductions to certain personnel funding, 0 to 10% reductions to certain operating funding, and again, both in this current fiscal year and next year, fiscal year 22. After gathering additional feedback, we issued a memo in early January directing a 1.5% reduction to personnel funds and a 7.5% reduction to certain operating funds, again in fiscal year 21 and 22. We believe this approach best balanced our need to get a balanced budget in a timely manner, but also recognizing implementation challenges. I do want to pause for a minute and just address some misunderstanding about what this cut is and what it isn't. It's not a 1.5% reduction across the board cut to pay. It's a target that units will be accomplishing in a variety of ways, whether that's not filling vacancies, not filling retirements, or possibly in certain limited circumstances, there may be reductions in staffing. But I do want to emphasize this process allowed us to avoid the broad, across the board, less strategic actions. It provided units some ownership and time to identify options thoughtfully and strategically. And I really want to emphasize this. I think you deserve a tremendous amount of credit for this. The sacrifices you've been shouldering for months as we've held off on filling vacancies and slowed personnel actions has provided the additional time and made a big difference. So where are we currently? Well, units have recently submitted plans to meet the targets, and senior leadership is currently reviewing and finalizing these plans, and we expect to be back in touch with units in the coming weeks. So how are units going about and crafting these plans, and what's guiding their work? Well, they're really guided by these 8 major budget principles that we've consistently emphasized during our discussions with units and also in our budget memo and direction. First, prioritizing our core mission. We've consistently noted this principle as part of our budget discussions and the process. Reducing and thinking about our budget strategically. You've heard the Chancellor repeatedly refer to vertical strategic reductions, and we're asking units to evaluate program enrollment, performance, and alignment. Streamlining and eliminating redundancies. We want to make sure that short-term actions are complemented with longer-term savings so we get back in structural alignment. We want to make sure we're considering revenue generation when we're evaluating opportunities for savings. We also want to make sure we understand that we're all in this together, and shifting impacts to other units runs counter to that principle. Obviously, consultation and communication is extremely important. And lastly, we're asking units to consider all layers of personnel with a focus on senior administrators. So what do we expect as an outcome from these actions? First and foremost, we will balance our budget by fiscal year 22. And we'll also be better prepared for uncertainty associated with the pandemic, as well as state and national economies. And finally, these actions will help us to get a better financial position more quickly, which allows us to really strategically reinvest in our top priorities in Carolina Next. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from folks on the body? You are not usually this quiet.
It's a very thorough briefing.
Allison, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi everyone. I was curious if you could address, I manage a budget and in my department, we are currently limited to only spending that is deemed essential. And I was wondering if there's a timeline for when what is essential may be expanded or when those freezes may lighten a little bit.
It's a great question. At this point, we certainly envision those limitations being in place at least through this fiscal year, as we're really trying to settle up and implement and execute the management plans that have been put in place. I do think we'll start to reevaluate in the next fiscal year whether or not there's an ability to either expand that flexibility and really gauge where we're at financially at that point. But I think at least through the end of this fiscal year, I think those limitations are likely to be in place.
Any other questions? Jacob?
Yeah, I just, I understand this is very much a broad overview and this may be far too specific a question, but how much range are you giving individual departments and divisions to decide and make particular judgments about funding? Like, does it make more sense for them to, I don't know, compensate an already existing employee at a higher rate if it yields a gross saving instead of hiring a new position? Just how much kind of flexibility and creativity are we allowing, especially considering the fact that so many employees have gone above and beyond in this time of tightening our belt?
Yeah, great question. And Jacob, our intent is to provide a lot of flexibility to units to really have some ownership. The units and unit leadership is closest to what's needed. And in certain circumstances, it may mean that there's an opportunity to increase compensation for individuals where there might be an overall savings, but an individual may see an increase. And that's why we've really tried to resist any across the board freezes on pay or salary actions or hiring actions, and really tried to exercise more judgment to make sure that there's an opportunity to be flexible and strategic where appropriate, keeping in mind the overall kind of budget situation we're in.
Any other questions? Here's one in the chat, but there will be hiring again, right? I don't think this current position of not hiring except for essential positions is sustainable.
I'll jump in and take that one. I'm saving you, Nate. There will be hiring again. Unfortunately, we're just not there yet. There are early discussions at the system level about what the timeline should look like for lifting the suspension or parts of the suspension, but we just don't have the details yet. But we're at least talking about it now, and for many months we haven't been talking about it. So there is at least a little bit more chatter, and I'm optimistic that we will see the authority to hire. Now, going back to Nate's point, as units are managing their budgets, they'll have to determine whether those hires are things they can maintain moving forward. And we're really working to be careful to help ensure that units are hiring people on sustainable recurring dollars, and that so that we can maintain those hires once we put them in place.
Thank you, Becky. Any other questions about the budget? Gloria.
I'd just like to ask a follow-up on the hiring. Becky, can you share with us what is the, I guess, the criteria upon which some units get to move forward with hiring, and then other units are told, no, we've got this freeze situation. And I know in some situations the money just isn't there. But in units where the money is there and there's hiring going on, it just looks totally inequitable. And I'm wondering, what is the criterion upon which there's the determination that units can move forward with hiring? I mean, there's searches going on for sure.
Sure. There is a temporary suspension, and the suspension also has a number of exceptions. And any HR officer, and we talk to the HR officers initially every week and now every other week, any HR officer can submit a request through the exceptions process. And that is reviewed initially by Link and I, and then, well, actually initially by the internal team, including finance and HR, and then by Link and I. And then we sit down with the chancellor every week and look at those and determine, we look at the justification that the unit has provided. Is this work that can't be done in any other way? Is this COVID-19 related? There are a handful of requirements, and you have to show which one of those you're meeting in your exceptions form. And we make decisions based on the justification you provide. It is intended to be a process that allows for some equity at a time when we cannot just let anybody hire in any way they want, but we recognize that there are some jobs that just need to have hires made. And so I appreciate that it feels inequitable, but the access to submit through the form or through the process is the same. Your point about it's about equity. There are some units that just don't have the resources to fill and are managing their budget cuts at the same time. I think it's also fair to say that the things that we have approved have been overwhelmingly supported by the growth on the research side and also by COVID-19 research. So there have been dollars associated and research dollars associated with COVID-19 research. So there's been some growth in hires in some of that space. One of the things we have done is encouraged, at least in the near term, work that could be done by temporary folks. We have approved hires, but temporary or time limited, just until people get a handle on their budgets. So we're trying not to leave units deficient of people to do the work, but trying to help them avoid being perpetually tied to a salary that they cannot maintain. So the intent is not to have temps in those roles in perpetuity, but rather just for them to get a handle on their budget situation and then determine, are these all the positions we need to manage our unit? And then how do we move forward from there? So there have been a number of things approved. Many of them have been temporary or time limited roles. Many have been in the research environment, and then others have been based on justifications that you have to check a box on the temporary suspension exceptions form. And then, like I said, those go through the review process. And we're required to report all of those exceptions then up to the system office about what we've approved. And if you paid attention to the Board of Governors meetings, they are looking at what the overall system level hires have been over the course of the temporary suspension.
So there is a question in the chat. So is it safe to say if leadership are well versed in the UNC language to include on job descriptions and justifications, jobs are saved? But what about leadership who aren't experienced with drafting these types of forms?
I actually wouldn't say that this is really about about language. We look every few weeks to see, are we seeing a compliment from across campus? Are we, one week we had a really heavy list from the School of Medicine, and we went back and said, these don't all look like priorities. And so we pushed back. We've been having lots of conversations, not just with we've been going back to HR officers. We've updated the form at the request of both the HR officers and the finance folks, and then people in the unit saying, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking here. Can you make this more plain language? So when we look at the data, it appears that there have been hires or approved transactions, because they're not all hires. Some of them are extensions to a temporary posting and that sort of thing. They seem to be well represented from across the campus. But if somebody's concerned that they don't have the right language, I would encourage you to either work with your HR officer or to reach out to us. This is not intended to shut down jobs, but to just manage a filter under the expectation that we are in a temporary suspension. And the suspension has rules around what sorts of things we're supposed to approve. And we're trying to follow the rules, but then also give the units as much freedom to do what they think they need to do best. And we like to think we set up a system that will allow us to get it right most of the time. But if we get it wrong, we want to hear about it. And in many cases, we ask a question and send it back to the unit, and that is not an indication that it won't move forward. It just might take another week because we want some clarity because we didn't understand or we have questions along the way. So I don't think it's about the way the language is drafted so much as it's pretty much a form, and then there's a little bit of justification written out. But again, if people are concerned about that, let's have more conversation. It's not intended to be an option for some and not for others.
I think we're getting so many questions about this because I think the strain has just been incredible on the folks that are carrying the load of people that have not, positions that have not been filled. And I hear it daily that it's a lot. And it's so impactful on folks that have transactional jobs that have to, they have things that just deadlines that have to be met. Transactions have to keep going. There isn't a whole lot of room to take on much more. So I think we're hitting a point where it's just a lot.
Yeah, understood.
Is that the rainbow form or something else? I think you're talking about the essential position form.
Yeah.
And Shayla just sent that it's the HR exception form. So my question is moot.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions for Nate? Well, Nate, thank you for coming. We very well might keep asking you back.
No, thank you. I very much appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, and have a great day. Thank you so much. And I know that we talked a lot about this previously, but Kathy, are you still here, and are you prepared to help us through the vaccine process? Great.
Yep, still here, and I have a couple slides I'm going to share.
Great.
Well. So we've already talked about some of this, but I did want to give everyone an update on COVID-19 vaccines. And there was a lot of late breaking news yesterday afternoon, so I'll walk through those. In terms of vaccines, as has already been stated, we're encouraging everyone that can receive and is eligible to receive a vaccine to get one. There are currently now 3 vaccines. The J&J one was just approved this weekend. It's a 1 dose, and so that's really exciting. It's going to be easier for folks to get that vaccine. And as was mentioned, Biden has, put some numbers out there that there's going to be a lot more allotments for all 3 vaccines. So we are very, very excited that the capacity of vaccines has increased. In North Carolina, there is a prioritization framework, which is led by UNC-CH. It specifies who is eligible and when. And that prioritization framework is based on those that are at the highest risk of exposure and also the highest risk of hospitalization and severe disease. So there is a reason why they did the stepwise process about who's eligible and when. So I'm sure most people have seen this graphic. I did put the most updated one in there, which got updated yesterday. And you can see that now we are, frontline essential workers are totally active, the whole group of frontline essential workers, not just K through 12 teachers and support staff. But group 1 is healthcare workers and long-term care staff. They've been open since December. And then older adults were the next group that were added. That's 65 and older. And then now we're at frontline essential workers. So just in terms of what the university has done, so for group 1, the healthcare workers, you do have to be a healthcare worker that has in-person patient contact. And we did identify all those healthcare workers at the university, including students, and submitted names to the state database. For group 1, the employer had to actually verify that they were healthcare workers. So we did have to upload names specifically and said, yes, these are healthcare workers. And so we started doing that back in December, and we continue to do that. And included in this group are volunteers at vaccination clinics. We have a lot of individuals that are vaccinating people and volunteering at clinics. So we are also uploading those names so they can get their vaccines. And then group 2 is older adults. So again, 65 and older. That group has to do a self-identify. And so the university really just communicated out when they became eligible, tried to make sure that people knew where to get vaccines. And so again, a lot of people have gone through for that group. The first subgroup as part of essential frontline workers was childcare and K through 12 teachers and support staff. And we do have individuals at the universities that meet that criteria. So for example, our student teachers. Again, we pushed out information regarding that because those individuals self-identify. So we don't have any role in telling the state who those people are. So again, we just try to communicate that out to them. And then yesterday, the announcement was made. Originally, the expanded group 3 was going to be March 10th. And yesterday, the governor announced that they were pushing that date up to March 3rd today because of the amount of vaccine that was available. And so again, you have to be must be in place person at your place of work, and higher ed instructors and support staff are included in that group. So again, just to, we already kind of discussed this, but we bulk uploaded all of our employees into the state COVID vaccine management system. And then everyone should have received an email from the state. And again, that email is just saying, if you want a vaccine, then here's how you can register for one. So if you do choose to obtain a COVID-19 vaccine, you would enroll in that state system. You complete a questionnaire and sign a consent form. And then once you're registered, you can go ahead and schedule an appointment with a provider. As already mentioned, we have several sites locally, but you can get a vaccine anywhere. So for example, I live in Durham County. If I want to go get my vaccine on the weekend in Durham, I'm eligible to do that. And again, so we did bulk upload employees' names, but we are not determining which employees qualify or notifying employees that they qualify. It really is up to you to self-identify based on the eligibility criteria the state has outlined. Just quickly, future phases. So yesterday, they also updated the date for group 4. So, and they did divide it into 2 subgroups. So the first subgroup are adults at high risk for exposure, specifically with 1 or more high risk medical conditions. And there's a CDC defined list that does get changed periodically. So you can check that on the CDC website or the state website. And then the second subgroup, as mentioned, is going to include students that live in congregate settings. And so we are anticipating, they haven't given a date for that, but based on the first subgroup being March 24th, we would anticipate that that second subgroup would be sometime in April. And then the last group is everyone else. So anybody that has not received a vaccine based on eligibility would fall under group 5. And lastly, I do want to let you know that as everyone knows, this information is updated and changes daily to weekly. And so we are really trying to keep things up to date on the website. So you can go to the Carolina Together website and look under COVID vaccines, and we'll have the most up-to-date information there for you to check out. And we definitely encourage you to do that because it does change periodically. So I am happy to answer any additional questions. I know we already took some earlier, but happy to answer any additional questions about vaccines.
Are there any questions about vaccines that we didn't go over already? Well, I have a couple because I got online last night, and I'm just going to ask them whether they're stupid or not. So when we go to identify ourselves, there are 2 areas. One says education and one says essential workers. Which one are we actually supposed to click on?
So the education one, I believe, when I looked yesterday, said K through 12 and childcare. So in the frontline essential workers, would be the second group. So if you're in person, so they divided the group 3 into 2 subgroups. That first one was K through 12 educators, and the second one was all additional frontline essential workers. So I believe that is correct. Now, I will say they change that form periodically. So I can check it out again today and look and see what currently is up there, because they could have updated it based on the, yesterday, the news conference from the governor.
Right. I did not see the K-12 designation, and that's what confused me. But here again, I could have missed it, or it could have been changed.
Okay, I'll check it out today and I can send that information.
And the second question I had was, I did not see the Friday Center as an option when I went in to find a site.
Was that on the state website?
On the state website.
Huh. It was on there. I'm not sure why it wouldn't have. Was that only showing available appointments? Do you know?
I'm not quite sure. What came up for me was UNC Healthcare at 101 Manning and Walgreens.
Yeah, so it might have been only available appointments, and maybe the Friday Center, when you looked, did not have available appointments. But they're definitely a mass vaccination site.
Okay.
And you should be able to, if they have appointments, you should be able to get an appointment and get your vaccine there.
Well, just as an FYI, Walgreens said they had tons of appointments, and then I made one and they didn't actually. And I stayed online on the phone for about an hour and found out there were none. So the website is a bit misleading when it comes to availability. And I'm sure it's because as soon as they come up, they disappear.
Yeah, the appointments, I mean, definitely you can check and 5 minutes later, appointments are no longer there. Yeah. And that is something to mention. We do encourage people to check daily for appointments, because since the state doesn't know what their allotment's going to be except the week prior to when they receive the vaccine, providers are not putting appointments up until they know how much vaccine they're going to get. And so definitely checking daily is a good idea, and you should be able to get an appointment.
Okay. Rose.
Dana, I'll just add on the Walgreens site. I talked to several people yesterday and again earlier today. On the site, it'll bring up appointments and it would say like available today. And you might be able to click an appointment today, but then you can't pick for the second shot. So it'll then say there's none available. If you look for your first shot, you move the today appointments, you start looking at tomorrow. That, oddly enough, you click on your first appointment for tomorrow, then there are second shots available. So you can't look at that first screen and say, I'm going to take the 4:30 today, because then it won't give you a second shot. But if you look at the first screen and you click to the next day and make your first appointment for tomorrow or for Thursday or whatever, then you can get a second appointment. It's a weird, stupid thing in the system, but that seemed to work for a number of people last evening. And then I was also told that Walgreens updates their appointments at 9 a.m. every morning. So that's the time you should log on. These are not, this is all sort of secondhand. And so I don't want to make any claim that it's that I'm a Walgreens advocate or expert. I just happen to know from talking to people that that was their experience.
Got it. Thank you. I will certainly try that. Rose, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, sorry guys. Earlier I was on my phone listening and I posed the question about the vaccine site, and then when they asked for clarification, I couldn't unmute myself fast enough. So my bad. But the reason that I asked that was this exact reason, because I did the same thing, went on Walgreens, went on DHHS website. As soon as I got that email, I was thrilled, and had the same experience, 15 appointments available, try to book one, and then it's gone into the ether. And so, with UNC being such a huge employer and us having such a massive population of employees who are now eligible for the vaccine, it just to me made sense that to kind of funnel folks that are willing and eager to get vaccinated back into the workforce and able to report back. It would be great if we could register with the state as a vaccine distribution site somewhere on campus where folks are already either coming back or will be coming back to. So that was really the purpose of my initial question. And this discussion has just kind of illustrated exactly why I had that question.
Yeah, so, the federal government is really leading the charge on the COVID vaccine. And, they've slowly started adding additional people to be able to be vaccine providers. But I don't know if folks saw that FEMA is actually going to be opening a huge vaccination site in Greensboro, where they're going to be able to do 3,000 people a day. And so a lot of vaccines being pushed to that site, for example. And then, UNC, the Friday Center does get a very large allotment based on their throughput. So at this time, we don't envision that we would have a site on campus, just because there's so many sites around us that are already doing vaccinations and already getting huge allotments. Now, that's not to say, like we do flu vaccination clinics every year for employees. So as allotments go up, that's not to say that we couldn't have a vaccination site. But at this time, it's just how the vaccination rollout has been. They're being very specific about where they send vaccine.
Got it. Any other questions?
Thank you. Just want to say thanks.
I know we covered a lot of this at the beginning of the meeting, so perhaps we've covered all your questions.
Great.
One last shot to the body. Any questions?
There's a question in chat, sorry, about once someone has been vaccinated, should they continue to be tested?
Yeah, so at this time, you should continue to be tested. As was mentioned with the variants that are currently around and possibly new ones that might come up, it's a little unclear, whether or not the vaccine will work against those. So as of this time, you should still continue doing the testing, but of course that could change as well. But as of now, we would like you to continue testing.
Laura's got a question.
Hi, I don't want to take up the airwaves with an individual question, but I am confident I am not the only person in this predicament. So I'm looking at the questionnaire now on the website after you log in. And me personally, I am working at home, have no idea when I'm going to go back to the office. And so I'm trying to answer the question of, do you identify as any of the following? And the ones that I'm toying between are frontline essential worker in person at work. I'm gonna go with no, since I'm at home. Other essential worker, non-frontline. I don't know what that means.
Yes, so in group 4, in the second subgroup, there's some other what they call other frontline essential workers that are identified. There's a list of them on their website.
Okay.
So that would include those people. That's what it's. So it's the second subgroup of group 4.
Second subgroup of group 4.
Uh-huh.
So probably not me.
Probably not. Yeah.
Okay. And so I and others in my same scenario might be none of the above.
Yes. So
okay.
which means you would be group 5.
Okay. That is
everyone group.
Thank you so much for clarifying.
Anyone else? And people are pointing out my bad pun. One last shot to the body.
Amazing pun. Amazing pun.
Yes, I was an improviser at one point in my life. Okay, I guess there are no other questions. Thank you, Kathy, so very much. Chances are we're going to ask you back pretty soon for another update. Thank you for your willingness to be here and keep us updated.
Sure, no problem.
All right. I think now we will move on to our fabulous HR partners and their update.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. I just want to point out that I dressed to match Kathy Brennan because she's my current vaccine idol. So I dressed accordingly today. And I do have to say that now that the Chancellor and the Provost come to this meeting every month, and Nate came today, I mean, you guys have sort of killed my buzz. I used to be able to come with good news, like we just sent out this amazing vaccine email and things are in pretty good shape. And now they steal all my thunder and I don't have anything to say. I mean, come on. No, in all fairness, or in all truth, it's lovely to join you again today. I'm delighted to hear that you all have such good questions about the vaccine and about the budget. And I hope the fact that everybody was able to spend some time today collectively having a conversation about these things demonstrates that together we're moving forward on a number of these major issues. I can say that in HR, we have been doing our best to help Kathy and her team and the vaccine stuff. We did provide the list yesterday. Several people have asked who was on that list. If you receive a paycheck from UNC, you were on the list. If you do not receive a paycheck from UNC, but happen to work here in some fashion or another, you weren't on the list, but that doesn't mean you're not eligible for a vaccine. All the list did was get you pre-populated in the registry. So if there's somebody you talk to in your unit and they happen to be working as an outsourced temp and they didn't happen to make the list or some sort of thing, again, doesn't mean people are not eligible if they meet the criteria set up by the state. It simply means that they weren't pre-registered in the system. Kathy, I'm saying that accurately, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Just want to make sure, because that's come up a couple of times since yesterday. We already talked about the temporary suspension. I mentioned that we do hope to see some end in sight for the temporary suspension. Certainly the state budget news being better than we thought seems like that would be a likely indicator to the Board of Governors and the system office to perhaps see a loosening of those restrictions. Will they go away entirely? I'm not sure. And from a campus perspective, I do think we'll continue to review jointly with HR and finance position requests, whether we'll be obligated to bring all of them to the Chancellor every week. I just don't know. Right now, they're requesting that he sign off on everything, but we're still sort of just waiting on more guidance on that. Another question several people have asked is, okay, so we're talking about vaccines, we're talking about return to campus in the fall with a more traditional looking campus. I don't want to say normal, but something that looks more like historical semesters have looked. What does that mean for the workforce? And several people have said, I work just fine at home. Can I continue to work from home? I have mentioned to this body before that we are waiting guidance from the system office on remote work and telework provisions. As you all know, we currently have a teleworking policy, but under the pandemic, we're not working under the existing teleworking policy. We're actually working under the communicable diseases policy. So the teleworking policy that we have is going to need to be updated based on the guidance we get from the system office. And what we're waiting on right now is that guidance to tell us whether there will be requirements of certain numbers of days or weeks in the office per month, whether there will be restrictions on where people can reside. Right now, we do anticipate there will be restrictions on ensuring people continue to reside in the state of North Carolina. And we're trying to figure out what the rules are. We know that there are several units on campus that would like to look at either a more quasi-permanent remote work setup or a sort of a flexible work arrangement where somebody may work on campus for a few days a week and work remotely a couple days a week. We want to do everything we can to support units in planning for that. We're just not there yet. We're waiting on the guidance, and we need to ensure we have the guidance so we don't inadvertently direct you to do something that you're then have to reel back in. So we want to make sure we have the appropriate guidance. But we also are going to need to be really careful in thinking about positions and not just have this be about individual wishes of people. And we're going to have to spend some time talking about which positions lend themselves well to remote work. And while we've all been, many of us have been working remotely, not all, but many positions have been working remotely that would be better done on campus. There are other positions that have been done remotely that are equally good done remotely. That should not be based on who's in the role, but should be based on the duties of the work itself. And so we're going to need to spend some time talking about what those positions are, what the challenges associated with remote work are, and then where flexible schedules come into play. That's all going to be a process. There will be a mechanism to engage on that. We just don't know exactly what it looks like. And currently under the remote work policy, that is not it's not a grievable option, and that it's really up to the supervisor's discretion. I think we're going to have to look at having both supervisor discretion and then some role-based piece. I don't think we can go back to the existing policy as written without running into some problems moving forward. So we're talking about that. And there's more to come at this stage in the game. I think we are planning to have as many people back on campus for the fall semester as possible. We know that, as the provost mentioned in the discussions this morning, there are some discussions about what the provisions for safety are and will be. For example, the group setting if students were wearing masks, would we need to maintain 6 feet in the fall? Or if most people are vaccinated, would a smaller distance between desks be considered safe according to the CDC and others? Those are things that will impact who and how many students are on campus and where and timelines and that sort of thing. The same is true in work environments. And we're initiating some early discussions with our colleagues in facilities and elsewhere to talk about what are some of the spatial requirements that we have. Where do we have people in areas where they're situated more closely together versus further apart? And then we know that the single largest source of transmission has been eating and drinking together. So if you work in a cubicle and you typically keep a cup of coffee at your desk, we may have to tell you you can't have drinks at your desk any longer because we can't have you take your mask down and drink your coffee and that sort of thing. So these are big work changes. I get it. I mean, it's hard enough for me to make it without my cup of tea currently. And then it's one thing to say you can't have drinks in the classroom because most classes end at 90 minutes or whatever. It's another thing to tell somebody in a workplace that we have to change the standards for how we manage, or we may not have break room setups, that sort of thing. So we're looking at all of that. And again, much like the vaccine guidance is changing pretty rapidly, like knowing what's to come for fall. I mean, in the pandemic, fall seems like forever away, and also tomorrow. So it's important that we do this planning, but I don't want to tell you that we have any certain guidelines yet because there's a lot that will change and could change. But I want to assure you that people are thinking about these things. And then I think, absent any questions, which I'm happy to answer, Link is here and I'm going to let him chime in if he's got anything. And then probably most importantly, Jessica Pyges is here and she is prepared to talk about the virtual wellness week, which is coming up. And she has been a total superstar in working with many of you and a whole bunch of others in putting together a week-long virtual wellness week full of activities and opportunities for employees to engage in beginning March 8th. I think that 8th is right. I'll let Jessica correct me. And I hope we've sent messages to the deans and vice chancellors and to supervisors encouraging that they provide leave for employees to participate in this event. And that was a request we received from some folks, I think, in this group early on. But I hope all of you will make some time to participate as you're able in the virtual wellness week activities. And with that, I'll stop talking and take any questions you may have.
So James has his hand up.
Yep.
Hi, Becky.
Hi there.
I've got a question. I've had a couple of staff members to ask me a question about after they get a vaccine, they've had side effects from the vaccine, and they had to use. They were wondering, did they have to use their own time, or can they use the COVID leave?
It's a great question. It's something I should have mentioned right away. So we sent out a notice, I guess it was last week, Friday, maybe, I'm losing track of the days, that we have gotten approval to use leave for either 1 or 2 days, depending on when you get your, or what kind of vaccine you get. So you are eligible to use leave to get the vaccine, and then you are eligible to use up to 1 day of the leave for side effects. If you have side effects beyond 1 day, then you're required to use your personal leave. Link, did I accurately describe that?
I believe you did.
So there is provision for both the day of the shot and the day after to provide for those folks. Only after they get into the second day afterwards would they have to use their own leave.
Okay, thank you. That answered the question.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Hey, Becky. Your answer might be we don't know, but I wanted to ask, after you guys get guidance from the system office around like new work from home or remote work options, do you have a sense of what the campus's timeline will be in figuring out the rest for Chapel Hill, or is it really totally depends on what the guidance is from the system?
I think it totally depends on the guidance, and based on some early discussions, it may be that we pilot this in a few areas and not do it in a broad base, just as we sort of figure out how to more effectively do this. I mean, I recognize that creates a challenge as well, but there's also, as you no doubt understand, there's some expectations that we work at the university, and that there are lots of people who wish we're back already, and that we all do our best work and get the benefits of the community when we're together and on campus. And those are compelling arguments on one side, and then there's also a bunch of arguments on the other side. We can manage space differently. There are people who have other concerns that they want to manage. There are some people who can work with lesser schedules, and therefore there can be savings. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways of looking at a workforce. Whether we can turn as quickly as we might like, based on when we get the guidance system, to ensure that we're doing whatever we do, we manage to do in an equitable way, I just don't know, because it'll sort of depend on when that guidance comes and what other things are happening. But I'm hopeful we can turn it around relatively quickly. But again, I really want to make sure we're spending some time looking at positions and not just individual people, because that is the surefire way to ensure inequity. If we start just saying, I want to work from home, I need to work on site, that sort of thing. So that when you have to start looking at individual positions, that's a much bigger endeavor than the way we've historically done it. And this is also a change in mindset for a lot of people, and it's a culture change for us as a campus. And man, if I were an expert at changing culture, we would be in a lot different position than we are as a campus. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're going to do our best, and we're going to come to you and ask for feedback along the way.
Thanks.
Yep.
So I'm reading out of the chat here, and I'm sort of picking which I want to ask this question because it probably goes to Catherine, or it may actually also go to Becky. The question is, were employees who are unfortunately currently on temporary furlough and not receiving a paycheck registered into the DHHS website, vaccine site?
My understanding is yes, and we actually have very few people on temporary furlough who are actually working 0 hours any longer. We've been able to bring a number of people back. But even so, they remain in our payroll. And so they would be included in that list, yes.
Perfect. And is it safe to assume there are no updates on early retirement packages?
Yeah, I had a discussion with our state relations folks the other day, and they seem to think this was slowing some in the General Assembly. So I have a call tomorrow afternoon, I think it is, with my colleagues at the system office to see if that's exactly what they're hearing. So I don't have an update, and believe me, I'm desperate to have an update. Well, unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be able to. I don't think early retirement's going to help me. I don't think they're going to give somebody who needs 20 years before they can retire. I don't think it's going to be that good of a package. I think we're probably looking at people who are within 6 months to a year of retirement as an early retirement package.
Got it. Well, that's disappointing for me as well. So, and there was one question here, and I see that Wilhelmina is on the call. I think she still is, and I may be putting her on the spot. Is she still here? It's a question about parking and the impact of, I guess, non-parking revenue as we come on the budget. Will, are you here and want to discuss that, or am I putting you on the spot?
I'm here, and certainly. So I guess what is the question? Are we losing revenue? Yes, a lot.
And I guess the question sort of seems like I'm wondering how the parking revenue has changed with people being remote and what impact that's had on the budget situation for UNC.
So for the budget situation for UNC, it doesn't really have an impact because transportation and parking is fully receipt supported. So it has had a huge, well, 99.9% receipt supported. It's had a very big impact on our department, but not on the university as a whole. So transportation and parking, we live to make a campus accessible for everybody. And what that means is that one of the things that we do is we pay for local and regional transit, free boarding, local transit, and regional transit in order to minimize the number of people who have to park on campus, because you have probably realized that we don't have enough parking spaces for everybody who wants to park on campus. And the other thing, the other big commitment, the big financial commitment we have is that all the decks that are built on campus are paid for by TNP. There is no university funding for that. So as you can figure out, we have some very large bills. Now, we have taken a lot of steps during this pandemic in order to ensure that our expenses are as low as possible. I think at the moment we have about, I don't know, we have more than a dozen unfilled positions with a department of about 90 people, maybe. Don't quote me on that because those are guesses. So we've taken a lot of steps to minimize our expenses in order to not have as much of a gap between our revenue and our expenses. And you may have taken advantage of, we did a lot of things for the fall and spring semester. We made semester permits available. We made teleworking permits available. We made some more parking available to those who were on campus who might not have been eligible otherwise. So, we tried to do a lot of things that both benefited people who had to come to campus and helped with our revenue shortfall. So far so good. We'll see what happens in future. And I think one of the things that might happen is that, people who, for instance, we even had resident freshmen parking on campus this year, which has never happened in the history of UNC. So we might have some unhappy students next year if things become more like, normal.
Great.
Answer the question, or?
I think that got to the question, but if there's a follow-up question, now would be the time. Anybody, now that I have Will on the hot seat, sorry to do it to you.
Hold on one sec, there's somebody at my door.
Any other questions for Will? For being a sport, for jumping in unscripted? I think that was it, Will. Thank you so very much for being a good sport and jumping in.
Sure. And any questions, call us. We are here on campus.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
So Becky, did you want to move to Link's and Jessica's?
I think we're going to kick it right to Jessica unless Link has something to add.
No, that's right. You covered everything that I would have talked about. So Jessica, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Becky, for the great introduction. If you haven't heard, and Becky let you know, that next week starts our first virtual wellness week. So this program is designed to help you reset, refocus, renew, restart and repair, because that's what we've all been doing for the whole year now. So it is a week-long program that's supposed to, you know, try best to replace our in-person event that we would have every Wednesday during spring break. Of course, you know, if you've ever been, that event was a 3-hour program and there was something happening in every room. We had massages, we had mindfulness education sessions, cooking demonstrations, a large exhibit hall with 100 exhibitors. We had ongoing fitness classes going on, and we were trying to mirror that the best that we could. And we could not do that limited to 3 hours on a Wednesday. So Wellness Week starts Monday and it goes through Friday. There is not a session every single hour, but there is a session most hours of the day. It's not intended for you to participate starting at 9 and staying on till 5. But it's planned so that you can have the variety to pick and choose those sessions that interest you, that work best for your schedule. There are even some sessions that happen after 5 for those who can't step away during the workday. And there's an extensive on-demand library as well. And within that library, we have over 20 pre-recorded sessions and other wellness documents to give you information that if you can't step away, you can access at a time that's convenient to you. So that will be next week. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen, just if you've not clicked on the link or visited the website. Otherwise, I don't want to miss this opportunity. And so this is the website. You can access it through the link I provided. Also, the quick, easy to remember Go link is go.unc.edu/wellnessweek-2021. And it's not letting me scroll. Let's see, hold on. All right, guys, I'm having an issue with the site letting me move down the page, but when I'm not sharing, I promise it does work. What it looks like at the bottom of the screen, and hopefully I'm not frozen. It appears that I might be.
I think what we're seeing is just a big black screen.
Okay. But you can hear me, right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'll keep talking. Hopefully the computer will not shut down. But on the screen, if you scroll down after the introduction, there are 3 different sections. The first is a list of the live agenda, so you can see what's happening every single day of the week. You can click on the time and title to get the full details, including the participation links. You will notice that.
Oh, she's gone. She may be having computer issues, and it appears she's been completely, yep, she's been kicked out of the meeting. I didn't do that. Just that's a technical difficulty. It may be that she's having problems on her part. Let's see if she comes back in.
Well, at the very least, she put the link in the chat, so hopefully everybody gets a chance to see it. And then if you have specific questions, you can ping them either to Jessica or to any of us in HR, and we'll make sure we get you an answer.
All right, I'm going to give her a couple of minutes to see if she is able to get back on. But we can certainly move through the agenda until then. Any last words from HR?
I did have a question if the on-demand sessions will be available after the week is over.
Arlene, I believe they will. I think we're going to leave those up for at least the time being. I don't think we have any plans to bring them down right after the event.
And then there was a comment, no massage chair, wah. Okay, all right, well, let's move on in the agenda, and we can come back if Jessica is able to get back on the computer. So we're moving into the portion of the consent agenda. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, or does anyone want to pull out an update from their committee?
Can I pull out a quick update from the blood drive committee?
Okay. Anybody else want to provide an update? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda while pulling out an update from the blood drive?
So moved.
Second?
A second.
Any opposed? No. Okay, Jen, you're up.
Yep, I just wanted to let folks know that the Carolina Blood Drive Planning Committee is meeting next Tuesday. And I just had the time pulled up and now I've completely forgotten it. We are meeting from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. If you are interested in attending that meeting, you can either contact me, Jen Daniil, or you can contact Matt Banks and he will get you the Zoom info. And all are welcome to join us for the planning of that. We are right now in the planning process for our June blood drive, which I believe will be June 8th this year. And so we're looking forward to everyone's participation. And that's my update.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to old business. If you were here last month, you know that we had a rough first reading of a first draft of resolution 21-01. And I think, Phil, are you going to walk us through that? How would you like to?
Shana.
Yeah, Stephanie's going to do this. I'm going to share my screen. So if folks need to scroll or type, just yell at me.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie and Phil.
Yeah, one thing before I start reading this, Phil put the link farther up in the chat, and I think it is also on the forum website. Matt also sent an email about this yesterday. This version is a little bit different for a few reasons. Mostly the first version of this resolution that we read included a lot of topics. And after trying really hard to make it all cohesive and clear and kind of well argued, we just realized we couldn't do it. So this resolution addresses additional duties, compensation, and the 20% pay cap. And then we're hoping to have another resolution that addresses kind of career banding issues and career progression. So those are not going to be forgotten. It's just not in this resolution. Okay, so resolution 21-01 regarding authority to approve salary increases for EHRA, non-faculty, and SHRA university employees and redefinition of additional job duties in the university's salary increase guidelines. Resolution of the Employee Forum, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, March 3rd, 2021. Whereas it is the stated mission of the Employee Forum to seek out and address constructively issues affecting staff, faculty, and students of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated longstanding issues related to employee compensation for their labor, highlighted in the October 2020 Employee Forum report, Effects of COVID-19 on the Employees of UNC-Chapel Hill and Recommendations for Senior Leaders, as 12% of survey respondents explicitly stated they were working more or harder than was typical prior to the emergence of the pandemic, and whereas university EHRA non-faculty and SHRA employees remain essential partners in the pursuit of outcomes associated with the university's strategic plan, Carolina Next Innovations for Public Good, as endorsed by the UNC-Chapel Hill Board of Trustees on January 30th, 2020. And whereas a strain on UNC employees of such magnitude hinders progress towards the achievement of objectives from Carolina Next, particularly those expressed for strategic initiatives 1, build our community together, 3, enable career development, and 8, optimize operations. And whereas through the Carolina Next strategic initiative to enable career development, university leaders acknowledge a need to improve our operational efficiencies to create a smarter working environment and foster staff development for the evolving university workforce to recruit, develop, and retain the very best. And whereas through the Carolina Next strategic initiative to optimize operations, university leaders call for efforts to design, implement, execute, assess, and continuously improve the administrative operations that support the university's mission of teaching, research, and public service. And whereas the effects of COVID-19 on the employees of UNC-Chapel Hill and recommendations for senior leaders report also documented evidence-based recommendations for university leaders, including, quote, provide additional compensation and, quote, protect vulnerable staff. And whereas the authority for pre-approving salary adjustments of over 20% for SHRA employees currently resides with the UNC system office, while the authority for salary adjustments of over 20% for EHRA non-faculty employees currently resides within the UNC Board of Trustees, the Office of the UNC System President, and for salary adjustments of 25% and above, the UNC Board of Governors. And whereas the HR pause and efforts under the Carolina Next Strategic Initiative to, quote, optimize operations have largely precluded academic support units from, one, backfilling positions which have been vacated since March 2020, or two, creating new positions without seeking levels of approval beyond what had been normal human resources policies and processes for university operations. And whereas, in lieu of hiring employees to address unmet increases in the volume of work, the university has relied on existing staff to absorb the job duties for little to no additional compensation. And whereas, the justification for this disinclination to implement temporary or permanent salary adjustments for employees who have taken on additional duties lies in part on the current policy definition of additional job duties, which requires that there be a, quote, substantive increase in the scope and or complexity of the job, including temporary adjustments with a defined start and stop date, and that, quote, such an increase may not be justified solely on the basis of increased work volume. And whereas in practice, when a Fair Labor Standards Act exempt employee, thereby ineligible to receive overtime, takes on the duties of a lateral or lower classified position, there exists no mechanism for the employee to receive appropriate additional compensation under the existing definition of additional job duties, temporary or otherwise. And whereas the university leaders have consistently asked schools, work units, faculty, and staff to do more with less due to the lack of an approved state budget over the previous 2 fiscal years, a situation which is only exacerbated by university leaders' intentions to attempt to balance the university's accrued budget deficit while still in the midst of the economic recovery from the pandemic. And whereas the consequences of which are that many SHRA and EHRA non-faculty employees across the university have been assigned increased work volumes for the foreseeable future with no mechanism for commensurate compensation under the current definition of additional job duties in the university's policy. And whereas it would be a fairer or more equitable to university staff and more fiscally prudent for the university to provide compensation commensurate with the additional work performed by current UNC employees in lieu of hiring additional staff to perform those duties. As an illustrative example, a department has a business and technology applications technician contributing competency level leave the position. To hire a new employee to fill the vacant position with a listed market rate of $49,092 a year based on the current published career banding market rates, the fringe benefit rate for a permanent employee of 25.889% for fiscal year 2021, and the fixed health insurance expense of $6,512 a year would cost that department $68,313 annually. However, a 20% salary increase, i.e. $9,818 a year for a business and technology applications technician contributing, currently employed at UNC, whose annual salary is equivalent to the market rate, $49,092 a year, and who has taken on the additional job duties of the vacated position in the work unit on a temporary or long-term basis, will increase that current employee's annual base salary to $58,910. Adding fringe benefits and health insurance, the total expense to the department would be $80,673 for the current employee to assume lateral responsibilities and an increased volume of work. Rather than committing to a new employee's salary of $68,313 a year to fill the vacant position, the department could invest $12,360 annually to retain a high-performing current employee with the institutional knowledge, skills, experience, and expertise to accommodate an increased work volume and be appropriately compensated for performing that additional work through a salary adjustment. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Employee Forum urges the Chancellor and his cabinet to advocate on behalf of the university to reclaim campus level authority to approve EHRA, non-faculty, and SHRA employee salary increases greater than 20% and $15,000, and advocate for the UNC System Office and in turn, the North Carolina Office of State Human Resources and the North Carolina General Assembly to update the definition of additional job duties as described in the university's salary increase guidelines policy to include substantive increase in work volume as permissible qualifying reason for temporary or permanent EHRA non-faculty and SHRA employee salary increases to 1, ensure that the staff who are performing above and beyond their usual job duties and workload are being appropriately compensated, and 2, maintain the fiscal integrity of the university, and 3, mitigate further job attrition due to burnout or pursuit of external employment opportunities.
Okay, so as is the process, I now open the floor for discussion on Resolution 21-01.
I do want to compliment the committee who worked on this. They obviously put a lot of thought into it and a lot of research.
Thanks, Arlene. Phil and Rose did a lot of the heavy lifting, and we got a lot of feedback from the Personnel Issues Committee. So everyone did work hard.
Yeah, and thanks to folks all along the way who pointed out egregious errors in some of the earlier things that we had written in the previous version. Jacob has his hand up. Oh, and apologies to Jacob for implying that he hadn't read the report earlier in a chat message that I shared. Everyone has done the required reading for today, so applause to all of you for making it through this document. So Jacob.
It's totally fine. Still not, there's too many cross-media communications. Like, I don't know if an at me is at me. Anyway, I guess my first question is, before we get too deep into the actual resolution, is more of a procedural thing from a parliamentarian standpoint. So sorry to make you deal with this, Kevin. But given the massive substance changes from the first reading of this, do we have to do a second reading? Because this is nothing like what we discussed last time. I mean, it's similar, but it's significantly changed.
So technically, no.
And let me let me qualify that. So the Robert's Rules of Orders does not require us to do a second reading. By historical preference, we have done 2 readings so that there can be discussion after the first reading and the ability for folks to take this back to their areas and then come back and approve on second reading. So yes and no, there are no requirements as of Robert's Rules of Orders, but we do like to give folks a chance to have a second reading just for what we're doing right now, which is we read it, there were substantive changes that needed to be made, and then we brought it back.
Yeah, we did borrow pretty significantly from the portion of the resolution we talked about in the first reading to flesh out this. I think the major changes that we adopted here based on lots of feedback that we got of trying to do too much in the first resolution was the example of the comparison between new employee versus compensation for additional duties example that Rose was very helpful in contributing, and a more dedicated focus on the sort of additional work required of university employees specific to the pandemic, leaving aside some of the things that were more career development focused in terms of the ability to have your salary increase if you applied for a new job at UNC, the available opportunities in terms of job prospects at the university, and so on. So there are glimmers of the original resolution in here. I think we just added pieces or leaned into pieces where we got some real good faith pushback.
And Rose, you have your hand up.
Yeah, actually, Phil kind of just covered it, but I was just going to say the same thing. It was, I didn't initially have a role in the first draft, I don't think, or maybe I did. I don't remember. I don't remember if it went to the body before I looked at it or not. But anyways, yeah, the first draft basically just had more, right? It addressed like several different issues, and this one is more narrowly focused on this one particular issue. And Phil's right. A lot of the information leading in the whereas sections referencing Carolina Next and all of our different strategic initiatives and things like that, that's all from that initial first reading draft that we did at the last meeting. And it was really just narrowing the focus and also getting really technically accurate about the terminology and what specifically we identified as deficiency that we wanted to address. So I hope that helps. I had the same question though about, whether we needed to do a whole new first reading or a second reading, because we do want to give people an opportunity to have feedback on this stuff.
Now, I will say, if anybody has any objections to the motion on the table and they want to see it held for further review, any member of the body can raise a subsidiary motion to table this motion until next month's meeting, where it will be lifted from the table and read again, which would essentially give it a third reading, but that would sort of reset the clock on it, and give it the 2 readings in its current form. But another first reading isn't technically required, as Shayna elaborated from my original answer. Yes.
And I don't want to speak broadly for the group responsible for this, the Personnel Issues Committee, but we are certainly open to that prospect if there is something that demands additional attention beyond what's already in there. So if you do have sincere objections to this, that is certainly a fine way to proceed.
And I also just want to reiterate, resolutions are generally crafted based on feedback we get from our constituents. And the 2 major things that came to me and the body were the 20% cap and the additional duties. And so I think that is why it was decided to take the other portion out and create a second resolution around them and keep these in the first resolution. And I see Michael hand up.
Just speaking to the substance of the resolution, I can think of at least 4, probably 5 teams or groups within ITS and outside of ITS where this is a problem that should be addressed, and this resolution seeks to address that. The example that is given in the resolution is almost down to the number, exactly what I know is happening in at least one group outside of ITS. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. That's really great feedback. Anyone else?
To say thank you as well. This is Tiffany. I actually, up until last week, have been doing someone else's job in addition to mine this whole entire time that we've been out. I did get recognized with an above and beyond certificate and I think a $50 gift card through my department, which was nice. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, guys, for your work on that, because there are those of us out there who are dealing with this.
Oh, and I guess sorry, I shouldn't keep offering comments on this. I guess one of the words that we were very careful in choosing was reclaim around campus level authority, because apparently this was some of these salary increase conversations were things that were in the purview of UNC-Chapel Hill to address. Oh, Jackie has a hand up.
Yeah, I'll just echo my support in saying that in athletics, I believe we've experienced some of the same issues. We've had people that retired either during COVID or prior to, and there are several people that are covering their job do, their duties during this time, in addition to taking on additional duties. So I'm just echoing what everybody else was saying, and I think you all captured it very well. Thank you.
There are a lot of affirmatives in the chat as well. Great job, you guys, really marvelous. Are we worried this could cause furloughs?
I guess I'll just speak briefly to that. I mean, based on the conversations so far and information that Becky and others have shared, it sounds as though that's not one of the financial tools that we would pursue as a campus. Like there are other options for working with the budget beyond that, but I don't want to speak for Becky or say something incorrect. So if
I'm happy to, furloughs are a temporary budget tool in that they provide a one-time source of funds. They're an important tool that, as you all know, we don't have full access to right now, but that is one of the legislative requests that the system office does have into the General Assembly, so that we would have the tool available should we need it. That said, as Phil said, furloughs don't provide a recurring savings. And as Nate mentioned in the earlier budget discussion, most of what the university has been trying to do most recently is address our $100 million structural deficit. And that requires that we manage on a recurring budget that savings. And the budget requests have asked for a 1.5% savings on the personnel side in each of the next 2 years, and a 7.5% savings on the operational side in each of the next 2 years. And the focus has been on trying to protect people as much as possible, though admittedly, as we've talked about before, it does sometimes lead to fewer people doing more of the work.
And I saw Jacob's hand up go up first, and then Rose's. Is it okay if I stop sharing my screen, folks?
It's okay with me, unless people want to make edits in real time.
I'm sorry. There we go. No, I just wanted to clarify. My initial question was not because I wanted to take more time, but because I wanted to move this faster. I was wanting to make sure there wasn't a roadblock, just in case anybody thought I was trying to throw up one. I was making sure we weren't going to trip over our own feet, because that would be frustrating. Because I think this is necessary and needed, and I think streamlining it and making it more pointed was essential and a very, very intelligent move. I think, triage is important, and this I think is probably one of the most important things we're dealing with right now. The rest of the stuff that we were trying to address, I think, can happen in the next few months and over the summer.
Great, thank you. And Rose.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one point about this kind of topic as a whole, because I know that every unit across campus is different, and everybody has their own budget, and they all have their own finances, and they all are funded different ways, and it's all different. So the purpose, for at least from my perspective, in writing this resolution to address this issue doesn't preclude units still from looking at their own individual financial situations and whether they can afford things. But I think what Becky was just talking about, the call to tighten the budget and make cuts, it's the numbers in the example kind of illustrate, rather than backfilling a position, you preserve somebody's employment with a significantly lower expenditure. And that was kind of, I think, just the thing that I wanted to highlight a little bit.
So let me just describe the process as it exists in our virtual world. In order to pass this resolution, we do have to do, in terms of open meetings laws, we do have to do a roll call vote. So I want to give time for further discussion if there is any. But if not, Katie, are you ready to do a roll call vote?
So if somebody wants to make a motion, I am ready to read our list of delegates and go through a roll call vote.
This is Arlene. I move that we move forward.
The motion has actually already been made. The chair needs to call the vote.
Okay. I am now, in the absence of further discussion, I am now calling the vote.
All right, so my list, it goes by division, so I apologize, it's not fully alphabetical. So I'll read everybody's names, call out your vote, and I'll jot that down. Division 1, EHRA non-faculty, Lauren Anderson.
Yeah, I, is that the correct? Okay, thanks.
Randall Borer.
Aye.
Sarah Carrier.
Aye.
Adrienne Cromwell.
Aye.
Philip Edwards.
Aye.
Evan Marsh.
Aye.
Kevin Robinson.
Aye.
Robert Smith III.
Aye.
Division 2, SHRA Service Maintenance, Timothy Carville. James Holman.
Aye.
James Stamey.
Aye.
Division 3, SHRA Skilled Craft, Rich Brandenburg.
Aye.
Division 4, SHRA Administrative Support, Academic Affairs, Ellie Alexander.
Aye.
Tiffany Carver.
Aye.
Mandy Melton.
Aye.
Laura Pratt.
Aye.
Jacob Womack.
Aye.
Division 5, SHRA Administrative Support, Health Affairs, Stephanie Brown. Valerie Cartagena.
Aye.
Stephanie Foreman.
Aye.
Latifa Gregory. Natasha Hanks. Mary King. Katie Musgrove, aye. Kelly Scurlock Cross.
Aye.
Division 6, SHRA Administrative Support Other, Jesse Bongiovanni. Morgan Douglas.
Aye.
Leah Hefner.
Aye.
Keith Hines.
Yay.
Arlene Metter.
Aye.
Khadijah Murray. Sarah Smith.
Aye.
Matthew Teal.
Aye.
Division 7, SHRA Technical, Zanita Blackwell. Joanne Blake. Alicia Brandt.
Aye.
Melissa Campbell. Elizabeth DeBose.
I say yay also, yay.
Nicole Eggleston. Zebediah Harris. Ayla Ocasio.
Aye.
Sarah Wackerhagen.
Aye.
Charles Streeter. Division 8 SHRA Professional, Darren Abrecht.
Aye.
Ashley Belcher. Andrew Brennick.
Aye.
Shane Brogan. Shayla Evans Hollingsworth.
Aye.
JC Field.
Aye.
Adriani Jabalisco. Chrissy Greenberg.
Aye.
Jesse Hill.
Yay.
Shayna Hill.
Aye, yay, yay.
Quintera Jernigan.
Quintara, aye.
Ursula Ide Marchese.
Aye.
Jeff McQueen. Nataya Neal.
Aye.
Joe Ormond. Lakeisha Person. Tom Ross, Teresa Silsby,
Aye.
Greg Smith, Antonio Squire, Jake Stollard,
Aye.
Rose Thorpe,
Aye.
Michael Williams,
Aye.
Tracy Weatherby Williams, Division 9 Executive Managerial, Allison Constance, and Jen Daniil.
Aye.
Okay, did I miss anyone, or did I get everybody's vote that's here and present?
So I noticed when you called Danita Blackwell, there was a delay, so you might have, she chimed in later, but I think you had moved on to someone else, so you may have misgotten her.
Okay, I have marked her vote down. Anybody else? All right.
Did you get me, Katie? This is Lakeisha. Did you get me?
I will mark down your vote. What is your vote?
Aye.
Excellent.
Thank you.
The motion passes.
Great. Congratulations to the committee. I know these resolutions are horribly difficult to weed through. My sincere thanks to everybody. I think this captures what we're hearing from our constituents. So thank you very much. The motion is approved. And so quickly, I have a hard stop at 11:30 because I'm jumping into another meeting, but I did want to point out, Natalia would like, please direct yourself to the chat because the employee forum awards are coming up, and that process, please check in with her and her committee if you want to be a part of that process. I'm sure they will need you. And I want to give a quick timeline of what's going to happen through the rest, through July. I think after this meeting, Matt is going to send out a call for nominations to become an employee forum delegate. So if you want to create some buzz around having folks join us as delegates, please let them know that that's imminent. That may be coming out today or tomorrow. In April, we will actually have the elections, and new delegate orientation takes place in late April. In May, we have the incoming and the outgoing delegates happening at the May meeting. We generally go over the delegate charge. Historically, that's been a big meeting for the Chancellor, but as we have a roundtable now, that may look different. In June, the employee forum awards are given out. So the work that you will do with Natalia's committee, we'll be giving the awards out in terms of that work in June. And the new officer elections also happen in June. It is my understanding that all officer positions, with the exception of the parliamentarian, are open this year. That means the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary and the treasurer all can run. These are all one-year terms. I think Kevin is in his second year of the parliamentarian elected term, so that is not open for this year. And then in July, the employee forum retreat happens in lieu of the monthly meeting. So that's just sort of giving you the rundown of things to come. And if anyone else has anything else they want to talk about, this is the new business section of the meeting. Anybody else want to throw out anything there? Any announcements anyone wants to make so that the body is aware of their efforts on campus? All right. In the absence of further new business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Jen Daniil.
Arlene seconds.
Any opposed? All right, everybody, thank you for a wonderfully productive meeting. Thank you for your work on this resolution. I am so proud to be a part of this body. I hope everybody has an incredible day. Thank you very much. Take care, all.